Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. The cost of childcare is one of the largest monthly expenses that families face. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the average annual cost for an infant in Missouri is about $800 a month. In Illinois, it's $1,150 a month, dwarfing the cost of food and, in some cases, housing. In fact, in 33 states, infant care is more expensive than in-state public college tuition. At the same time, child care providers are tasked with doing more work for little pay. So where is the money going, and what policies would help alleviate the strain on both education centers and families? We want to hear from you this hour. How much of your paycheck goes towards child care? Do you feel there are enough options locally? Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Joining me in studio to talk about this critical issue is Steve Zwolak, CEO of the Loom Institute and Executive Director of the University City Children's Center. Steve Zwolak, welcome to the program.
Well, Sarah, welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
In the intro, we mentioned average annual costs for infant child care in Missouri and Illinois. When we say daycare is expensive, what kind of range are we talking about?
First of all, let me correct one thing. It's not daycare. Like we said, we don't
take
care of days. Sorry about that. That just has to be habit. The costs that we're seeing really don't cover the actual cost. When I look at University City Children's Center, for a baby, it's about $18,000 a year for tuition.
And that's a fair amount of money.
It's a lot of money, but we spend, as an organization, we spend about $24,000 per baby. So even if you're paying full fee, you are receiving some form of tuition assistance. Out of all the families in our infant toddler program, about 64% receives some form of tuition assistance.
And when you're talking about assistance, are these scholarships for kids? Are these tax breaks?
Yeah, we provide a sliding scale scholarship framework, and I wish it was much more linear and easier, but we may have a family who everything was going well, and somebody might lose a job, and we have to make sure that we're supporting them in those processes. And but we have families who pay no tuition because we are part of Head Start and Early Head Start to $20 a week.
That's a deal.
on up to to reach the $18,000 maximum a year.
You're saying even for families that are paying full freight, they're not paying the full cost that is necessary to do what you're doing.
No.
How do you make up that difference?
Well, you're lucky you're not getting an envelope from me right now saying.
Let me guess, you're going to add me to the list.
No, we do fundraising. We have an event. Actually, we have an event next week actually located at the 9 Network, our Fairy Tales concert. But we have to do fundraising, and I think this is becoming more and more of a challenge. We are building early childhood on the backs of families and teachers.
Tell me a little bit about how that has changed over time. You've been in this field for a while. Have the costs gone up significantly?
Well, I think the needs, we talk about childhood is changing, okay? But a child's developmental needs are not. And we're seeing more and more heartbroken children, as I call them, kids who are more traumatized kids, and the need for child care is becoming more multidimensional, and teachers need something different. It's not about ABCs and 1, 2, 3. It's how do I help the child? How do I hold their heart? How do I hold their soul? How do I take a kid who really doesn't know, who's never been in child care before, and really I need to understand how to socialize differently. And the children today, and this crosses all economic barriers and cultural barriers, children need love And I say that really, really emphatically. They need love. We are spending an enormous amount of time thinking that a pad can give it to them or a technology can give it to them. And children need what they've always needed. They need a lap and they need you. So consequently, we have been investing in, we need to invest more in teachers, but the cost of quality, which is, there are a couple criteria for quality: teacher-student ratio, educational background of teachers, class size.
And all that costs money.
And it costs money. And unlike a typical elementary school where they have a teacher and a classroom, you have a classroom of maybe a pod of 8 babies, and you need 3 teachers, probably 3.5 teachers.
And that costs, as you say, a lot of money. You can join our conversation by calling 314-382-8255. We've got Emily is calling from St. Louis. Let's go to that call. Hello, Emily. You're on the air.
Hi, and hi, Steve.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, I am. I'm just calling to talk more about what we pay towards childcare and.
Yeah, tell us about your family. How many children do you have?
We have 2 children, and one of them is actually at University City Children's Center, which I'll mention since Steve is the guest. We have an almost 6-year-old who's about to start kindergarten, and one of the reasons we started her in pre-K last year was just because of the cost of childcare, because we also have a 19-month-old, and he's in one of those rooms with 8 infants total. So our expense overall is about 14% of our combined gross income. That's for me and my husband. And birth to 3 is the most expensive period to pay for, and it's when you have the least time to save or prepare for it.
Emily, how has that expense affected your family? Have you found yourself having to go without things or make different decisions?
Well, we have pretty secure professional jobs, so I feel like we're very privileged in that sense, but it is our most expensive monthly expense. It's more than our mortgage. Our cars are 15 years old and paid for. The only other recurring debt is student loan. But as I said, we could have kept our daughter in childcare another year, and one of the reasons we didn't was because of the cost. We're talking about whether we want to expand our family, and having 2 children under the age of 3 in childcare would be very expensive. I feel like families and providers are all kind of out there on their own because there's not enough comprehensive publicly provided support for this.
Steve, do you see that with the population that you're serving?
Emily, you've hit all the hot spots. This is enormously challenging, and until we think of a strategy that's going to involve public dollars, philanthropic dollars, and business dollars, it's so important. And we really haven't cracked the nut. I mean, the fact that we still use daycare and we use some other words that really minimize the importance of it. When we look at the research says that, first of all behavior has meaning. What happens early in life lasts a lifetime. Okay, and the brain architecture, the majority of the brain architecture is created in the first 5 years of life. These are critical pieces of data that we have, and this is hard data, and yet we're paying on average across the country. Teachers make $10.27 an hour. And so how can we build a system of quality when we are charging parents and an enormous amount that they can't afford, and we're paying underpaying teachers?
Steve, Emily mentioned that 13% of the family's income goes to child care. Federal guidelines suggest that care should cost more than 7%. How unique is that experience?
Well, it's the cost is the actual cost is it's killing families. It's just killing families. And
Emily mentioned they might not even have another child because of this.
Yeah.
Is that something that you hear?
And we've had more experiences where families are saying, "Oh, can I take summer off and recoup a little bit?" And yet then we have a wait list of a couple hundred children. And it becomes a real dilemma for families. And how do we help them? And then we're stuck as providers. We're stuck with the dilemma of we don't want to build it on the backs of parents, but we're not paying our teachers enough. And the other criteria for quality education is professional development of teachers. Our teachers that are coming into the field are not coming in equipped to navigate the challenges that we're facing today. And I've been being in the field for over 51 years. I've seen the trends.
We've got another caller here.
Yeah.
Let's go to Jim. Jim, how has this issue affected your family?
Well, we had 2 kids in daycare, and when I kind of was looking at my old pay stubs, and I realized that I was spending as much, as I was making on the daycare. Like, the whole reason I was having a job was just to pay for the daycare. So,
wow. I mean, at that point, how do you even get motivated to go to work?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. I have to just be rushing the kids out the door, and it's like they have a job, So, so I talked to my wife about it, and we figured out we could make it work for me just to start staying home. So that was a couple of years ago.
So now you take care of your 2 children at home?
Yeah, now we have a third too. We have a 5-month-old.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thank you.
And do you feel like your children are? Sorry, go ahead.
We wouldn't have had a third one. Like Emily said, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to afford it if we had to keep them in daycare.
Yeah, and I think that, Jim, first of all, kudos for coming up to that making that challenging decision. And I think more and more families are really beginning about how do we do that, how do we navigate that. And perfectly, being home with a parent is so beautiful.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
I mean, it's beautiful. And if families can figure out how to make that work, great. But we have, the work-life balance is getting so out of control. And
not everybody could stay home like Jim was able to.
And, I remember talking to a parent, and they just switched their child into our program, and they said, oh my gosh, it was the perfect school. The school happened to close. Oh. Okay, and so they brought their child over, and the mother was talking how wonderful that place was, and after 3 months, she came back to me and she says, I've really been thinking about the conversation we had. I could not say to you that I had my child enrolled in the most marginal school. So parents are faced with that guilt and the dilemma of when they do find places, what does it really mean? What am I looking for? And there's some recent data that's out there that was done by a group called IFF here in the St. Louis community and at Southside Day Nursery, where one of a parent's worst fears is that the teacher won't like their child.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's something that our caller, Jim, is not going to have to worry about. I wanted to say thanks for your call, Jim. You too can join our conversation. We're at 314-382-8255, 314-382-TALK. I'm talking here about the high cost of childcare with Steve Zwolak, CEO of the Loom Institute. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer. St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.
Now back to our conversation. We're talking about the high cost of childcare today, and we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 314-382-TALK. You can also email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org or send us a tweet at STL on the air. With me this hour are Steve Zwolak, the CEO of Loom Institute, talking about the high cost of childcare. And now joining the conversation is Christopher Robinson, an educational specialist, at Florissant Valley Early Child Development Center. Welcome to you.
Hello.
Christopher, why did you first get into the childcare field?
Initially, I joined the field to help with the overall growth and development of my own children, because I was trying to teach them when they were younger, but I didn't think I was doing it properly, so I needed guidance, so I enrolled in school.
And you were previously at a different child care center, not Florissant Valley. Can you tell us, maybe you don't want to name them, but tell us a little bit about what that situation was like? I see you rolling your eyes here.
Well, the other center I worked at, I noticed they weren't truly focused on the children. It was primarily about getting funds. The children weren't put first.
So sorry, they weren't putting the children first. What were sort of some of the problems that you saw?
One of the problems was the meals the children were being served. It seemed as if they were going with the lowest vendor so they can keep money that was being given to them.
Cutting some costs there.
Correct.
Okay. Steve, do you see that kind of cost cutting in some, I'm sure not at your institution, but in some others?
I think these are challenges that the centers have to face. I mean, recently in St. Louis, we've had 3 centers in our community that have closed.
Mm-hmm. They just can't make the cost pencil out.
It's not a viable economic model without getting public support and business support and philanthropic support. This is a real challenge.
Is St. Louis child care segregated at all by racial lines and economic lines? For less fortunate children, are they ending up in daycares like the one that Christopher's telling us about?
And I would say it's fascinating. Yes, I mean just look at what's going
shock.
on. I mean, just look at what's going on in our community. But there's some interesting things though, because we're doing a lot of work in underserved communities. Okay, and we are reaching out to teachers who haven't necessarily been reached out to before. Mm-hmm. And I am finding such exuberance and excitement. And they're basically saying to us, no one has paid attention to us in this geography. Mm-hmm. And you are listening to us and you're hearing us and you are seeing us. And they want something new and different. So we're beginning to build in some very sophisticated, very unique methodologies of working with children. And they're eating it up. But it really goes to the point that geographically, they have been ignored.
Some communities don't have options
They
like that.
They don't know the options. They're not necessarily given the options. And the lines that are drawn, the geographic lines in St. Louis match what we're seeing economically, socially, culturally, racially. These are challenges.
Christopher, what was the class size like at the previous institution that you worked at?
The class sizes could range anywhere from 10 on the low end all the way up to 22 children.
22 children for how many teachers?
It has to be depending on the age group. So I'll say between 2 to 3 teachers.
Okay. Tell me about the place that you're at now. Do you feel like that's been a big change?
Oh, yes, ma'am, definitely.
And what about it? What do you feel like is working?
The whole center as a whole seems to be working very well. Because all the teachers have to have college background, properly educated. We go through a lot of training. So we're constantly learning new things and new ideas to help the children's overall growth and development.
Let's take another call here. We've got Gloria calling from St. Louis to talk about her family's experience. Gloria, hi.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Gloria.
Hi, Christopher. How are you all doing today?
Hello.
Gloria, tell us what your family has experienced.
So I have 2 little ones, and when I relocated back to St. Louis, both of them were in a child care setting, and at that time it was a family-run child care center, so that was very helpful to me because the costs were pretty low, but we spent over $13,000 a year for both of our children to be in that setting, and so now they're in school. My son just graduated from pre-K this year, so he'll be entering kindergarten in the fall.
And were you happy with the child care setup before he went to preschool?
So My aunt ran the center, and I love her.
I hope you liked it.
Oh, yes. I mean, I couldn't say that on the air. But there were absolutely pieces missing, but I knew for sure that both of my children were well loved in her care, and so they couldn't, write in cursive or speak in a foreign language, but they had great meals, and family members were around to take care of them. So I felt really at ease when it came to leaving them.
Gloria, thank you for that. Christopher, if you want to jump in here, how important is love in a setting like this to have caregivers who really care? Does that make a difference, or is that just it's intangible?
Oh, that's very important. Next to safety, love would be the second most important thing, I believe.
Now, you're a man in a profession that in many cases tends to attract women. How unusual is it to be a man in this field?
It's very rare, but
was it hard to talk employers into giving you a chance? People sometimes get leery about men around kids.
I faced a little bit of that, but overall, I think most employers will be excited to bring a little diversity to the field.
Steve, can you speak to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I know Christopher a little bit, and he's underestimating what he understands and what he does when it comes to loving children. Mm-hmm. He gets that. And we know that learning happens in relationships, so he gets that piece. And the mother that was on just a moment ago, Gloria, she talked about the nuance. They didn't learn about cursive. They didn't learn some of those pieces, but they were loved. They were loved by all. Our community needs to come together and bring that concept back in to hold the hearts and souls of our children. It's very lonely out there for parents. They don't necessarily know what to do, what they're looking for. And I mean, we have, to go back to Jim's point, he's home as a stay-home dad. I would love to have him know we have this initiative called Vroom, which is it started as an app, but it's a way of being with children, how to engage your child in relational activities, and for parents and for teachers, it's just a fabulous piece. And as parents may not think they know what they're doing or what they have, but it is there for them, and it validates what parents already know, what they're already doing. It gives them a framework for it. Mm-hmm. And I think teachers need to understand the piece. Mm-hmm. But so anyway.
We got an email here from a listener. This is from Patricia. As a parent of a 2-year-old, I was flabbergasted at the reported average monthly rate for infant care in Missouri as $800 a month. I understand this is an average, but I've never seen a rate this low anywhere in the city or county of St. Louis for a child under the age of 2. Steve is nodding. This rate also shocks you. Yeah. Let's take a caller now. Let's go to Gina. Gina, hi.
Hi.
Tell us.
Hello.
Yes. Tell us a bit about what your family's experiencing here.
Oh, well, I'm quite older than the other people who are talking. Both my kids are grown up, and I was very fortunate in that I was able to work part-time. And my mother actually watched my kids when they were really little. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I'm listening to everybody, and other than working part-time or not working at all, so that you can take care of your kids yourself, or getting somebody like me who was lucky enough to have my mother watch my kids when they were little. What are the solutions? I'm not hearing any as y'all are talking. I'm just hearing people talking about their experiences, and perhaps that's all this radio show is about.
Well, I should break in here. A little bit later in the hour, we do want to talk about some public policy solutions, and I know that Steve is really ready to talk about that, and I've sort of asked him to hold off for the moment. But Steve, in terms of an individual, let's not talk for a minute about what the government could be doing better. Is there anything an individual family can do, or are we at the mercy of our politicians here?
I think the systems are the systems right now, and we really need to begin thinking about breaking them apart. Mm-hmm. We've tried everything. I mean, at University City Children's Center, I have to raise close to $1 million a year for tuition assistance.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And these are the dilemmas that we're having. If we want, we need to begin thinking about, and I'm going to seep a little bit into it, but, early childhood, what we know about early childhood now, what the brain research is saying, and what we have theory and observational research, that we need to look at early childhood as a different kind of an investment. And until we see value on it, we're going to be patchworking things together. Families are patchworking things together. We do not have enough licensed spots for all the children that need care. We have some challenges with figuring out to identify what quality is. So, Gina, these are real hard things that we're wrestling with and grappling with now, both locally, regionally, and nationally. And there's not an easy answer. So I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront, but it is the narrative that we're looking at right now, because we have different data, different understanding about the importance of early childhood.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're here talking with Steve Zwolak, the CEO of Loom Institute, about the high cost of childcare, and Christopher Robin, an educational specialist 1 at Florissant Valley Early Child Development Center. Christopher, I understand that you could you could go teach at an elementary school if you wanted to. You'd be qualified to do that. What has kept you wanting to work with this population of much younger kids, 2- and 3-year-olds?
The younger children, I want to try to help them when they're younger. Older children, to me, seem to be a little more disrespectful.
I can see that. I've got one.
Right. And the younger children are pretty much honest. They tell you what they truly mean and what they feel. They don't have an alternative motive most of the time.
Yeah, dovetailing to what Christopher's saying there, we understanding that what happens early in life lasts a lifetime. So kids just don't wake up one day and become disrespectful. Mm-hmm. Right. We see kids that are angry, and they don't wake up angry. Mm-hmm. Children are born for love. They need love, but they are learning some things, and our poor families are struggling. They're only doing the best they can do, mm-hmm. and we are not providing the necessary backdrop for families to understand what child development is and the importance of being a social parent and having peers to talk with about families, and having institutions that or schools, environments that will hold your soul as you're walking in, stressed from a tough day's work. They're coming in on their phones, they are struggling with their own minutia, and then they're picking up their 2-year-old who's crying and saying, I don't want to leave. And after, the family, the parent's been gone from the child and the child wants to stay, that creates a whole nother plethora of emotional stuff for families.
Christopher, I understand that you're really passionate about your work, but I imagine you're not making a ton of money doing it. Can you give us any sense of what the range is at the institutions that you've worked for, what they're paying daycare or child care workers?
Initially, I started out, I was making minimum wage for 2 years, and I didn't even know it because I never was in it for the money. I've always had something else going. Mm-hmm. Right now, I own my own party bus company, so that pretty much takes care of it.
Okay, so you have a side business to
Correct.
Help. Steve, why is the pay for child care provider? I mean, the idea of paying minimum wage to someone that we're entrusting with our children, am I crazy to think that sounds crazy?
Well, again, this is where my trend comes into play. There was a period where our politicians were saying anybody could take care of those kids. Any grandmother, and one of our presidents back 25 years ago made this had this big proclamation. We're just going to have grandparents take care of all these babies. We did not know what we know today, but we did know that relationships were important. And then there was a tsunami of need, and there was a notion that if we just train teachers to do paper bag puppets and do things that keep the kids busy, that it's fine. Well, today we now know that it's significantly more than that. It's about teachers developing emotional partnerships and parents developing emotional partnerships. So during this period, we just paid anybody, gave them basic knowledge. And in Missouri, all you have to do is be 18 years of age.
You can be 18 and doing this work?
Have a you don't even have to have a high school diploma. You need to be, you need not to be a felon.
Well, at least we have that.
And, you can't have TB.
Tuberculosis. That's what we're screening for.
And that's the baseline. Okay, so how do we expect? And a lot of our systems are putting in quality standards where we have to have degreed people. And it's been a real challenge. And how do we get degreed people when we're paying nickels? Nickels.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break. We're here with Steve Zwolak, the CEO of Loom Institute, and educational specialist Christopher Robinson. We'll be back in just a moment. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Welcome back. We're here with Steve Zwolak and Christopher Robinson talking about childcare. If you have a question or comment about this topic, give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. We've got a comment from Rachel on Twitter who says, in addition to building a reality where providers are paid fairly and children can thrive, we need to ditch the archaic expectation that 12 weeks is enough parental leave. Other countries support parents with policies that allow them to spend years with young children. When will the workplace catch up to the realities of what working parents need? Steve, do you think this is just overall a mindset problem more than anything else that our country has?
Yes and yes. We have, our culture, we have not built a culture of that level of respect. When you go to, Finland has some of the most progressive, holistic programs for families. And they provide leave for mothers and fathers, and it's extensive. It goes up to a year. But that's part of a culture, okay? And their education of children is slower and more intentional in the sense of they allow children to grow and learn and play. And we are trying to jam all these things in. So 12 weeks, that we
be ready to do this.
So a parent needs to come back and be ready for work, as opposed to a gradual roll back in. And there's organizations like Enterprise has a slower reentry process, but there are isolated organizations that are really honoring and respecting the importance of the baby's and mother and father's first year of life. So 12, it's ridiculous. We have to do something different, but our culture and our systems have not been designed for that difference. So we need somewhat of a revolutionary framework, and we need organizations and businesses to take a stand differently. But first, they have to understand what early childhood is about.
We've got an email from Ashley. She says, my husband and I have 2 little ones, and I am constantly having to crunch the numbers to see if me working is actually worth it. The cost of quality care is outrageous, and I don't feel comfortable sending my children to a low-quality care center. It seems that among the high-quality care, they only offer assistance to those that qualify for government assistance, so those that fall in the middle to lower income levels have to pay the same as a high-income family. It's not sustainable. Now, Steve, I know we talked about how University City Child Care, where you work, that's different. You guys do offer scholarships, so to speak.
Right.
But can you tell us a little bit about Missouri's child care subsidy program, and I guess whether or not you think this is even working? This is for lower income families.
And it's loaded with its own inherent challenges, and we still have something, and it's been mitigated a bit, about this cliff effect.
Tell us about that cliff effect.
Yeah, it's when a family qualifies for child care assistance, and they happen to get a raise, and they go across the level, or the threshold, and then they lose their child care assistance, they lose their Medicaid, and so it keeps
it actually sets them back.
Well, it's another way that we when we think about equity in our community, it's another way of holding back families, and so this becomes a huge challenge for our families.
Can you speak to, are there things that other states are doing that Missouri is not, that would help families here?
Well, I'm not attuned as tuned into what is going on in the other communities, other states, but I do know that Missouri is ranked in the 47th, 48th, and 49th states in the country on how we support children and families.
What a surprise!
Yeah, and but on the other side of that is we have families that Missouri we're probably in the 44th revenue generating state. So the money is not there, but either is the priority. You know, in the over this period of time, I've seen early childhood money taken away from early childhood and given to veterans. How do we argue?
Yeah.
You know, it's not a priority right now. Now, there's some initiatives right now that have just been passed, and there's an organization called Align, and Linda Rollo is the agent for that, and she's really pushing the Early Childhood Initiative in Jeff City, and we need more people like her, and she's generating the enthusiasm. And
can you tell us a little bit about that initiative? What are they pushing? It's nice to know that in Jefferson City someone's doing something.
Well, there's Missouri just received a $7 million federal grant that's going to be focusing on early childhood, and they're in the process of creating a strategic plan to figure out how we best utilize that. What do we really need to do that? So that's new. There's more access for school districts to bring early childhood into their systems, because if you are a school, you historically have not been able to use any public dollars for early childhood programs. So the school districts that have early childhood, such as Ferguson, Florissant, and Rockwood and Parkway, St. Louis City, they had to find other funding sources for that.
To do that.
It doesn't come out of the public dollars the way it traditionally does for them.
Elizabeth Warren, a candidate for president, she's proposed universal child care, a network of federally funded, locally run child care centers across the nation. Under her plan, enrollment would be free for millions of children, with the total cost per family capped at 7% of a family's income, no matter the number of kids. Is that feasible? Do you think that the families going to your center would buy into a program like that?
Well, you know, it's all about creating. It's all about creating. We have to create a different culture. We're going to have to create a new mentality on making these deep commitments. The time for we've done our share of needs assessments. We know what the needs are, but we need to stretch the initiative. We need to stretch the thinking. Will it work? It's all about the people. It's all about the people. I mean, you hear the plans. How do we implement it? There was an initiative several years ago in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania where there was like $70 million designated to early childhood over 3 years, and they were only able to reach about 700 children because everybody saw the money and there was all this grab, and it was a fragmented system. Mm-hmm. Now, the wonderful thing in St. Louis right now, we do have some initiatives that are really beginning to pull people together and trying to pull everybody out of our silos. And I referred to this IFF report, which is a needs assessment that really integrates all aspects of early childhood, and we now know where the gaps are. We have a clearer understanding of what the dollar gap is, and we need at least another $5 million just for one segment of early childhood. So the initiative is not just it's the Fox Clark Policy Institute is one of the drivers. Southside Early Childhood is one of the drivers, and they are facilitating narrative among all of our constituents to really finally put something together that's really going to push. The state of Washington does some of the best early childhood that we'll find in our country, but they have a significantly more united voice, and we have to get the voices rowing in the same direction.
On Twitter, Brooke from St. Louis says, this is not only a paycheck issue, it's an access and equity issue, and parents and providers pay the cost for a broken system. Christopher, from your experience in the field, do you see parents mobilizing to try to fight for this, or do you think this needs to come from the top down?
It can start with the parents, but in reality, I believe only changes will have to come from the top. Because the lawmakers are going to make the big decisions, regardless how hard the parents push for it.
And I'm sure the parents that you deal with, they're already busy being parents.
Correct. And they would love assistance or some type of sliding fee or discount, but because the cost is so high.
Steve, is that also true with the parents that you work with? Do you think that they could mobilize to take this on, or do we need a presidential candidate who's going to make this issue number one?
Well, parents need a strong voice. There are some pockets that are really developing networks of parents that are becoming a voice. The Deaconess Foundation is driving a lot of parental rallying parents together. So it's about knowledge and education, and we need a parent's voice. Collective parent's voice can make change, but they have to be heard. So it's really a sandwich approach. We really need to start, at the bottom and the top. It's about leadership, understanding the importance and the impact of early childhood differently, and it's giving families a voice. But you are so right. Families are so stressed.
We're so busy already. Someone else fight this battle for us, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have 2 children.
I do.
And thinking about what you go through and patchwork and summers together and what all of that looks like. These are real life challenges, and how much more does a parent have to give to drive down to Jeff City or to make that phone call? We have to help families. We need their voice, but we have to make it so simple.
And we haven't done
so
that yet.
Real. And we're getting there. It keeps happening. I would say in my 50-year tenure watching these processes, watching what's going on in St. Louis right now gives me the most hope that I've seen in a long time. I mean, it really, really has given me more hope.
We're talking with Steve Zwolak, the CEO of Loom Institute, about the high cost of childcare, and Christopher Robinson, an educational specialist at Florissant Valley Early Child Development Center. We've got an email from Crystal in St. Charles. She says the problem with childcare doesn't just lie in the cost. The wait list for reputable daycare centers makes it difficult as well. Our son was born in January. Even though both of us had full-time jobs, we had to take a long look at our financial future because daycare costs more than our monthly housing payment. We ultimately decided to have my husband stay home because of the benefit comparison between our 2 jobs. For a first-time parent, there is a benefit in having peace of mind that he's with family, but our son is missing out on the social development from not being around other children. Christopher, can you speak at all to what benefits do you think children are getting from being in a daycare environment or childcare environment as opposed to just being at home with grandma? Is there a benefit?
There's definitely a benefit. Being in a childcare facility, you're developing the whole child versus trying to focus on one development, like you spoke on earlier, ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. The children will get those, but focusing on the entire child as a whole is more important, because the social emotional is a big part of the child's development and growth.
And are you teaching the kids you work with, 2- and 3-year-olds, are you teaching them their ABCs, or are you just teaching them how to be people at this point?
We're mainly focused on them being people, but ABCs will come.
Do you feel like the parents appreciate that work, or do they want to see them right away learning how to read?
Some parents don't quite understand the process, so they want to see them learn how to read. But once you take time and explain to them how it actually works and explain to them how children learn, they finally get it.
This is a play-based approach. Is that what you're working with in your center?
Correct. And when I first started in the field, I didn't really buy into the play-based.
You wanted to teach them the ABCs
right.
too?
But once I seen it implemented, and I'm learning from them as well while they play, it like a light bulb went off in my head, and it works.
So you say you're seeing them learn things as they play. Can you give us an example of how this works?
Well, for instance, if the children are out on the playground playing with each other, riding bikes, for instance, some children will just sit back and observe the other children ride bikes and then maybe try it for themselves. Or sometimes other children will assist another child with tasks they can't complete. But if they're in a home-based center, they wouldn't get that interaction with multiple children.
Let's take another call. We've got a caller from Webster Groves, Delana, who wants to talk a little bit about what teachers get paid. Delana, hi, you're on the air.
Hi there. This is a great show, you guys. Thanks for doing this today. So yeah, half of the argument, it sounds like, teachers aren't paid enough, as I think Steve said earlier, paid nickels, literally nickels, he said.
Do you speak from experience here? Or?
Well, I mean, I get it. I'm on a few groups actually on Facebook that have a lot of in-home child care centers and mostly moms with kids trying to offset the cost of child care by opening their own, which is something I did a couple of years ago as well. But then the other argument is, better care equals even more cost. I mean, where's the happy medium? Maybe that's part of the next, topic on the show later on. But, if child care workers aren't being paid enough, yet a lot of the people who want to talk on the topic say it's the costs are astounding and just, not sustainable already. How do we, pay people more and what they deserve, putting up in 2- and 3-year-olds? Yeah. Our daughter's finally 3 years old, and she can go to the school district child care center, which is, a huge savings compared to some of the private centers and even some of the in-homes. But until the kids turn 3, a lot of parents are really stuck. We as a family and a lot of people are faced with it. One of the parents quitting their job until the child is school age again, which is what I did. And then for about one summer, I opened up my own in-home daycare and took 2 or 3 kids to try to make some more money.
Steve, can you speak at all to what Delana's been telling?
Well, the challenge of teachers, quality teachers, is salary is an issue. We need to be paying early childhood educators a salary that runs parallel with school districts. But the challenge is, if we were to give just a salary, if we had a couple $1 million and we gave salary increases across the board today, is it going to make a better teacher? So salaries and development, and figuring out what a quality educator really looks like, and teachers for the future need to have a different lens. So we need to look at pairing how we're developing and getting teachers prepared for the profession, and weaving in the salary necessary to draw the right people. The other challenge is we have school districts that are struggling with finding teachers for their own districts, and they are poaching, if I want to use that word, anybody that we might have that has a degree. Yeah. And so we're in a significantly more challenging position than I think we've ever been. So does money make a good teacher? No, but can it draw a good teacher? Yes. Can we grow a good teacher? We have to be able to learn how to do that differently. So I think that's a big challenge, and it's not going to happen overnight. This is a process.
We're going to end on just one very quick question for you, Steve, and this comes from a mom on Twitter. I want to know from Steve if Missouri is going forward or backward or treading water over the past 25 years. And just real quickly here, she says, I fear the answer. What's the answer?
I frankly haven't seen early childhood. This is the worst I've seen early childhood right now. Okay.
Oh, that is such a sad note to end on.
but I see we're in the greatest hope. I see the greatest hope right now, that we have people in the trenches that are unifying voices, and across our state, I'm seeing more and more people unifying voices, and we are beginning to think about how do we create a movement for change that's going to hold the souls of the children in Missouri.
And on that note, Steve Zwolak and Christopher Robinson, thank you so much for joining us today. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.